Were you surprised that Russia granted Snowden asylum?
I was disappointed because even though we don't have an extradition treaty with them, traditionally we have tried to respect if there's a lawbreaker or an alleged lawbreaker in their country. We evaluate it and we try to work with them. They didn't do that with us, and in some ways it's reflective of some underlying challenges that we've had with Russia lately.
That was the president on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno last night. This morning, the White House announced it was canceling a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin that was on the books for next month. Snowden, Syria, Iran, these are just some of the very complicated issues the U.S. and Russia are at odds over. But does Obama actually need Putin to get the job done? The Post's White House Bureau Chief Scott Wilson is joining me now. Thanks, Scott, for being here. I want to go and read the White House released a statement about canceling this meeting, and they said in part, given the lack of progress, we have informed the Russian government that we believe it would be more constructive to postpone the summit until we have more results from our shared agenda. My initial thought in reading that was, do they actually have a shared agenda, Russia and the U.S.?
They do more than you'd think, because they're in competition so much more than they seem to be cooperating. There's a shared agenda, particularly on containing kind of Islamist extremism, which runs through the southern Caucasus in Russia as well. There's big economic interests, particularly on Russia's side. That's one of the main reasons they need the United States. Syria is an issue that we would like more of their help on,
right,
as well as Iran, that they have concerns over. So there are shared interests.
Okay.
There's just very little progress being made over in recent months on any of them, apparently.
And how bad is this moment when the president says, no way, I'm not meeting with you, essentially a very high-level diplomatic snub?
It is exactly that, and Putin cares about pomp and circumstance surrounding an American president's visit. It gives him prestige. This is after several months when he's come under fierce criticism for his policies in Syria, supporting President Assad there, for the sweeping anti-gay laws that he has signed and championed, more trials of dissidents, sort of an abysmal human rights record in recent months.
Yeah.
Not to mention the recent snub, obviously, that they showed the president over Edward Snowden, not returning him, which was kind of a last straw.
Yeah, and so what has the reaction been on both sides of the aisle? Americans, Republicans, Democrats, and in Russia. We'd heard Russia say, for instance, that they don't think this is a good reason for the snub. What's your sense of people's reaction?
I think here in Washington, there's some rare unanimity around the fact that it really was not very possible to go. And as an administration official described to me this morning, a summit is supposed to showcase a relationship.
Yeah.
And you can't showcase a relationship that is not working.
Right.
And so there's been unanimity here, really, on the decision. Russia, they're trying to make it about Snowden. It's not just about Snowden. It's about a whole series of issues.
And so can Obama check off what he wants to check off on his to-do list without Putin?
Very difficult. I mean, first and foremost, because Russia is obviously a veto-wielding member of on the Security Council.
Yeah.
So sanctions against Iran, sanctions against Syria, military action against Syria all really come through the Security Council in the way Obama sees the world and wants it done. And Russia's there with a veto. So on a very simple basis, yes, they need Russia to work through a lot of those issues.
Talking to the Post Scott Wilson about Russia and the U.S., what's your sense of where we are in their relationship right now? I know you've observed them, maybe even up close at some of these summits they've had and traveling with the president. And we see the picture back here. Neither of them look too pleased. What do you make of their relationship?
It's as awkward a relationship as there is out there right now for the president. And most recently, I saw them at the G8 summit in Northern Ireland when there was this very awkward exchange, the president trying to make a joke about Vladimir Putin's martial arts and Putin not liking it.
He's like,
at
no,
all.
I see you making a joke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, look, this is a former law lecturer at the University of Chicago and a former head of the KGB. a senior KGB
Who
official.
likes to do all sorts of things like wrestle bears.
Exactly,
and,
ride horseback with his shirt off and all
Yeah.
kinds of things. They're very different people. And again, look at it from the trajectory of beginning with the so-called Russian reset. That was with a different president, Medvedev, but Putin was his prime minister, and Putin basically endorsed his candidacy for president. That was a different time. There had been some progress made under Medvedev, particularly on arms control.
Yeah.
And now this really is an acknowledgement that the reset is not working.
Right. And so where does this put Obama in terms of how world leaders perceive him, in terms of how we perceive him here? Some people say he's weak, some people say he's strong. Where does this put him?
Practically speaking, one criticism you hear a lot from talking with diplomats and officials from other countries is that there isn't a consequence often for going against Obama. I heard this quite a bit writing about the Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations he was trying to put together. Both sides would defy him and there'd be no consequence. This is a consequence. Is it a major consequence? No, it's not. But as you said, it's a high-profile snub, and maybe it'll send the signal that there are consequences to these choices.
And so what could happen to make this thing go away and make the meeting actually happen? Is it just a matter of Snowden? What's your sense?
I think it will not happen now because of not just because of Snowden. Even if they return Snowden tomorrow, I think that there's just too many other issues. There's trade tariffs after we helped Russia get into the World Trade Organization last year. They're putting tariffs on certain things they're not supposed to, U.S. goods. Seemingly small things like that, to big things like no progress on missile defense talks, that is very important to the president.
Right.
Another arms control round, important to the president. Really no engagement since Tom Donilon, then the National Security Advisor, went and visited in April. So I think it's really much broader than just Snowden. Really seems to me that was a kind of a high-profile last straw.
And there will be talks, Hagel and Kerry meeting with some lower-level Russian officials. What do we think is going to happen with those talks?
They'll meet Friday with their counterparts. The idea really is to pick up the pieces and say, here's where we are. We're not coming to Moscow. We don't want to walk away from this relationship. There's too much to do. How do we go forward with it?
Is this the Cold War all over again, or is that just a cliche to say that?
I don't think it is, to the degree that there's not sort of this international rivalry through proxies all over the world that there used to be. It's certainly cold in their relationship. And Russia certainly seems to still see us very much as a competitor, a rival, much like they do China, in which we could probably help them with. And it's part of Putin's makeup. It's part of the way he sees the world.
And in some ways, Obama, you said it's a cold relationship, and that's been a criticism of Obama just in terms of his approach to things, that he's more cerebral rather than being warm. I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, is that a fair criticism in the context of this relationship?
I think it's not quite so fair in this relationship, because he did have a better one with Medvedev, who was a lawyer, who talked about political reform, who was sort of a person much more of Obama's kind of view of the world than Putin is. And so there is the relationship problem that the president has had and continues to have in some areas, but Putin's a pretty tough nut to crack. It's hard to know how you'd approach him, and telling jokes about his martial arts isn't funny.
Right, if that's not charming.
It's just not working out.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Scott, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.